Hello there. My name is Sebastian Straub. I'm the principal solutions architect at N2WS. I'm a watch collector and usually juggling more projects than a Bond villain, minus the world domination for now. I'm joined today by Allan Liska. And Allan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am a intelligence analyst and ransomware researcher at Recorded Future, and I've been researching ransomware since around 2014 across a couple of different companies. So you can take that in one of two ways. I'm either an expert at what I do, or I'm really bad at my job because it's only gotten worse since I started researching it. So however you want to interpret that.
I don't believe that you're to blame or anything like this. It's just ransomware is everywhere. I'll be totally honest. I used to look at my LinkedIn feed and I was, oh, ransomware. Oh, I need to learn everything there is to learn about this particular article. But now, every morning when I check my LinkedIn feed, there is some ransomware attack somewhere. And I'm like, yeah, well, another day. I just can't stop that from happening. I also like the sign that you have behind you, ransomware sommelier. Is there a story behind that?
So this actually, I owe this to Sean Lingus. He is a reporter for CNN, and I did an interview with him, and he forgot my title. And so, as a placeholder, he put in ransomware connoisseur, kind of as a joke. Only he forgot to take it out, and then his editor didn't catch it. So it wound up being that I was the ransomware connoisseur, and I went back and I joked with him that I'm more of a ransomware sommelier because I can pair the right ransomware with the right vulnerabilities in your network, just like a good sommelier. And I am actually a certified sommelier. I've been to Bordeaux a few times, been to Porto, kind of traveled around the world. My wife and I love taking wine vacations. I am very much a city person when it comes to vacations. Let's go find a cabin in the woods kind of thing. I need four-star hotels and good Wi-Fi.
Why are we doing this remotely? We shouldn't be doing this as a Zoom meeting. We should be doing this in person then.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm all for. I keep begging my company to let me do webinars at a winery or a wine bar or someplace other than my office.
That makes sense. So ransomware. This is I'm not saying it's a defeatist attitude, but I have realized ransomware is here to stay. It's not really something that we can truly protect ourselves from because it's definitely going to happen. Somewhere, it's going to happen. So what's your opinion on 2025? What are we going to see?
Every year since 2016, someone somewhere has written a headline, blank year was the year of ransomware. And every year they've been right because every year it's gotten worse. But I think the thing that gets kind of lost in the mix is it's not just ransomware, right? Business email compromise is continuing to get worse and growing. Pig butchering scams are continuing to get worse and growing.
Mm.
It's all of the different types of cybercrime. The one difference with ransomware is the only kind of cybercrime that has its own PR arm. So, like BEC actors, when they steal $100,000, they don't go brag about it on a website somewhere. Same thing with pig butchering. But the ransomware dudes are out there shouting all of their victims to make sure everybody knows who got hit. And if that even to the point where it includes just making up victims so they can get the press attention. So while all cybercrime, I think, is growing and getting worse, ransomware gets the most attention because the bad guys are constantly feeding the news cycle of here's a new victim, here's a new thing. I mean, to your point about checking LinkedIn and seeing it every day, the reason there's news every day is the bad guys are telling us who they hit.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. The bad guys are essentially now it's the Oscars. We hit this person, we hit this company. What really is a pet peeve of mine. One of the things I don't understand why they do this, they're hitting the healthcare sector. This is usually when I hear, oh, a hospital couldn't provide any services. That's like, ooh, you're really crossing a line there. And it's just really terrible to read those news.
Yeah, I mean, healthcare is an effective target because it gets a lot of attention. So part of the problem with there being so many ransomware attacks is it's hard for a ransomware actor to get attention. And remember, their business, if you want to call it that, I hate using that term, but what they see as their business thrives on being able to get more people signing up for their ransomware. So we think of a ransomware entity as a single entity, right? We talk about Ransom Hub or Lockbit or whatever. But really, it's a collection of different threat actors because you have the person who made the ransomware, the developer, and they generally don't make it. They hire that out too. But the person who operates the ransomware, and then they have affiliates, and this is their term, not ours, all of these affiliates that sign up to use their ransomware. And so when they hit a hospital and they get lots of attention, more affiliates sign up for it. So you and I think of it as crossing a line and terrible. What they see as, oh, good, I'm going to get more people to sign up and carry out more ransomware attacks in my name, and I get a cut of each of those attacks, so I make more money. I mean, and I know that's a terrible way to look at it, but for the most part, there really hasn't been any consequence for hitting a hospital, right? Occasionally we see a ransomware actor get arrested, but for the most part, there are no consequences.
That's something I hear as well. If you had heard once a day, once a week, or even a couple times a week, somebody would rob a bank, you'd be like, wow, this is really weird. We need some new regulations. We need some sort of way to deal with this threat. I don't really feel like that's the case with ransomware. I mean, what do you think? Are there going to be some new regulations, laws? How is this going to be addressed on an even higher level?
So one of the things that has been relatively successful is the International Ransomware Task Force. So this was a task force started by President Biden. It now has 63 countries involved and allows for intelligence sharing across countries. And if you had to define ransomware in one word in 2024, it would be like law and order ransomware victims unit. There was more law enforcement activity in 2024 than any other year. And that included 2 or 3 dozen arrests. Now, that's just a drop in the bucket because there are also more ransomware attacks in 2024. But we are seeing where law enforcement is trying to take aggressive action. And that's not just arrests, that's sanctions, that's shutting down infrastructure, kind of the hacking back kind of thing that we've been wanting from law enforcement. Everything, and I know this is a very American point of view, everything except for drone strikes, which I'm telling you, if we drone strike one ransomware dude, they'll all quit really quickly because then we've upped the cost of carrying out ransomware attacks. But we are seeing more law enforcement taking this seriously and more cooperation, which allows for these arrests and these disruptions. But again, because we've seen so much ransomware activity, and 2024, we saw 3 10-figure ransom payments. So we've seen 10-figure ransomware payments before. We've never seen 3 in the same year. And that means that other threat actors, so we talk a lot about ransomware in Russia, but really it's kind of spread all over the world because a lot of threat actors see that and go, well, hell, I'm going to go do some ransomware because the likelihood of getting caught is low. Yes, I may get caught, but if I can get a 10-figure ransom, it's worth the risk.
And I also think the stuff that I read about ransomware as a service, even guys who aren't living in their basement and have real coding experience, anybody can do it. If you have a Tor browser, if you can get on the darknet, you can get ransomware as a service. And that's the stuff that really concerns me, that pretty much everybody can get to it now, right?
Right. And again, that's that ransomware ecosystem that we talked about. So going to be technical for a second. Feel free, if you're listening and you don't want to hear the technical side, go get a cup of coffee or something. But we break down a ransomware attack into multiple stages. You have the initial access brokers, and those are the ones who are constantly scanning, looking for either vulnerabilities, looking for stolen credentials, sending out the phishing emails, whatever it is. Like, they're the ones that are getting that first access. They then flip that access to one of the ransomware operators.
Mhm.
So could be they have credentials, they get admin access, and according to CrowdStrike, it takes 79 minutes from when an initial access broker first lands in the network to when they have admin access of that network, because that's how good their tools are right now. So then they flip that over to the ransomware operator. The ransomware operator then carries out the attack. They're the ones that are going to do the hands-on keyboard. and then they hand that victim off to the person who runs the ransomware as a service operation. And the ransomware operator, even their part is very heavily scripted. When they sign up for a RAS operation, here's all the scripts you need, here are all the tools you need, etc. Just follow this script. They'll even give them for keywords to look for files to steal. If English or French or German or whatever isn't their first language, they'll get them all the information they need. And then the person who runs the ransomware as a service operation handles payment, handles negotiation, publishes files if they're not going to pay or threaten not to pay, etc. So if you are somebody who just wants to get into cybercrime but don't have a lot of technical skills, you don't need it, because
Right.
for anywhere from a couple hundred to a couple $1,000s, you can buy your first victim. Then maybe you need a little bit of money to join the ransomware as a service operation, but you don't need that much. So you sign up for a ransomware as a service operation, and now you have the scripts and the tools and everything you need to carry out your first ransomware attack. So for an investment of a couple $1,000s, you can start doing ransomware. And if you have technical skills, there is so much leaked ransomware code out there. So the Lockbit leak from a couple of years ago was a big one, but there are 3 or 4 different ransomware families like Chaos and Phobos, etc., that have been leaked. And so if you have a little bit of technical skills, then you don't need to invest any money. You just get one of these leaked code bases and bam, you're a ransomware operator.
Wow, that's really scary. And yeah, anybody can get in on it. And you keep hearing, I read about, the little scams, where somebody calls you, I'm from Microsoft and I need help from you and you need to give me information. And then they get some Steam gift cards or some Target gift cards. No, this is the big leaks. Ransomware, we're talking, like you said, triple digit millions of payments.
And that social engineering has come to ransomware. So obviously we know about Scattered Spider and Lapsus, which are both Western-based groups. So they have members in the US and the UK. And they were able to use social engineering very effectively because, I mean, let's be honest, if some Russian dude calls you up at 2 a.m. and says, give me password, you're not going to fall for it. But if a British dude calls up and says, oh, I'm from tech support, give me password, you're more likely to fall for it. But now what we're seeing is some of those Russian operators are using AI to change their voice so it sounds like they're that British dude or a British woman calling from tech support at 2 a.m. to get the password, or more likely to get your MFA code and log in on your behalf. Yeah, so that social engineering has absolutely moved into ransomware as well.
Oh yeah, I just gave internally a training at N2W, and one of the things that I mentioned was exactly what you said. MGM was hacked basically with a phone call, but ransomware attacks are going full sci-fi with AI. Get ready for phone calls from Karen in accounting asking for sensitive details because, spoiler alert, it's not Karen, it's an AI bot trained on her voicemail information. And even you and I mean, we are on YouTube, we are on our voices are out there. So I basically told everybody, if you're getting a phone call from me asking you for sensitive information, do not trust it. Get a hold of me on one of my verified information pieces.
Everybody in my company knows I don't make phone calls, so I'm safe there. But yeah, no. And if you think about it, what is the biggest source of information for these people carrying out these attacks? It's your LinkedIn profile, right? And you can't tell people in your company don't have a LinkedIn profile, even though it would probably be more secure if they don't. But that's how Scattered Spider worked, right? Most ransomware is a target of opportunity, right? It's, oh, hey, there's this vulnerability we can exploit, or we have these credentials. Oh, and they work. Fantastic. Let's log in. Scattered Spider was a little bit different because they would pick a target, then they would literally go through LinkedIn and find a list of people that confirmed work there that were in the right position that they wanted, and then they would start social engineering those people. And it's hard to fight against that because they're getting the right information. They have your title, they have all the information they need because it's all right there for them.
That's one of the things I speak to our customers all the time about this. And obviously, one approach is about create backups. If your data gets encrypted, a friend called me, oh, I'm attacked, my hard drive is encrypted, and I'm like, where's your backup? First answer is, what backup do you mean? So then if you have a backup, if somebody sends you a message, give me money or your data is going to stay encrypted forever. Well, if I have a backup, why do I care? But one of the things that I think we also have to really worry about is that double and triple extortion. Attackers won't just encrypt your data, they'll steal it and threaten to leak sensitive information unless paid. And triple extortion adds another layer, targeting your clients' partners for ransom as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've even seen some ransomware actors threaten to hire somebody to go hurt a CEO or something like that if a payment isn't made. So, and that's again, that comes out of that scattered spider because they're part of that calm, calm online group that was started off as a bunch of gamers they're the ones that invented the concept of bricking, where you pay somebody to go throw a brick through somebody's house because they sniped you in a game or something like that. Well,
Mm.
that's sort of an extension of that. We can hire somebody to come hurt your CEO. So that triple and quadruple and whatever number you want to use, extortion is very real. That doesn't mean that backups aren't important. Absolutely, because that backup at least gives you that base of all our data's fine. Now we just have to deal with the rest.
Mm.
But because that double extortion also means that it doesn't matter where they get your data from. If you're the biggest name in the data they've collected, you're going to go up on the extortion site. We saw that with Klopp last year when they did the one breach. It didn't matter what data they collected. It mattered what the name was in the data. So like you're an intermediary or you're a hosting company or whatever, and you're a small company and they don't care about you, but you have data from Fortune 500 company that's in
Mm.
that trove, that's what goes up on there. So that's something that, you and I have been doing security for a while, and data governance for the longest time was a separate department, right? That was the
Yes.
compliance department. Now that's moving more into the security department because you have to worry about not just your data on your network in your cloud, but your partner's network in their cloud and so on. And that's, to me, that's new. I know a lot of security people will be like, oh, I've been doing that forever, and good for you. Most people in security that I've worked with haven't.
Yes, backups are important, no doubt about it. But unfortunately, I think that the data is kind of it's become more of a target for the backups. So back in the day, I remember long, long, long time ago when I was working for the DoD, we had offsite backups. So we had tapes and then we shipped them off. And even if something happened to that particular location, not a big deal because I have the backup someplace else in a secured location. Now with cloud backups, well, then the backups, when they occur and stay in the same account in the same cloud for the customer, well, then obviously their ransomware attack takes that into consideration. So they're also going to target your backups as well. What I found up to this point is really the next step is to make the backups immutable. It's like a time lock on your backups, right? You're the expert. What's your opinion on this?
Oh, 100%. I always emphasize immutable backups. So look at Dropbox, right? A lot of people, a lot of small businesses, especially, they rely on something like Dropbox. And I'm not picking on Dropbox. Dropbox is a really good company, just showing you how ransomware has evolved. So you have a Dropbox folder on your desktop, which means that if a ransomware actor's on there, they have access to that.
Yeah.
So what Dropbox did is they're like, okay, fine, but we're going to keep 7 versions of backups. So even if that gets encrypted on your Dropbox drive, you'll be able to recover. So what the ransomware actors did is they started encrypting 8 versions back, right? And there's only so much you can go if those backups aren't immutable. And that's why immutable backups are so important. I worked with one very small town, and I won't say where they're located, other than in the US. And they had this 30-year-old tape drive. And they were worried because they got hit with ransomware, but you can't encrypt tapes. And,
Mm.
I'm like, have you been testing regularly? And they had been, and they were able to restore from this 30-year-old tape drive. It took them forever. Like
Yes.
it took them a lot longer than they thought because all of their, incident response plan had been how long does it take to restore one server, not 200. But they were still able to restore
Right.
because even though tape isn't the fastest platform, it's safe, it is immutable, and as long as you continue to do the testing and make sure you're swapping out tapes for new ones because they go bad, that can work. It's not my recommended platform, but that's all you have and it's in the budget. Fantastic. Do that. It's better than not having any backups or having backups that can be overwritten.
sometimes the old-fashioned way is the best way. So yes, I totally agree. That's something I've been experiencing as well with our customers. It's like back in the day, I started, gosh, 2016 in the cloud. First meetings I had to explain to people why they need to back up the cloud. Why do I need to back up the cloud? Isn't it all the cloud? Well, no, nothing really has changed. It's just somebody else's computer somewhere in a basement. And then was like, oh, cross-region backups, cross-account backups. But really recreate this ability to have a, in quotes, tape offsite backup, it's really cross cloud. Then create your backups, put them in a different cloud. So if somebody does go through the length of hacking your AWS, your Azure, well, yeah, congratulations. My backups are in a completely different cloud, and I'm just going to spin up there instead.
Absolutely. And I know that cross cloud is hard to maintain. I totally get that. But when you do it and you do it correctly, it's really hard to beat that in terms of that kind of immediate response and immediate restoration. So I admire the companies that can do that really well. And just like with everything else, backups are never set it and forget it. I think too many people don't realize that. There's a lot of care and feeding that goes into making sure your backups and doing true tests of your backup capabilities, because you do not want to find out that something's not working on the worst day of your professional life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, that we're still working on getting people to change their opinions on how often they need to test. I had somebody who hadn't tested any of their backups in over 2 years. I'm like,
Ooh.
well, you put a lot of hope and into that this is going to work out well for you. A colleague of mine used to call that a resume triggering event. This is when you're going to send out automatically your resume to 5 other companies because, well, this is going to be over for you.
Yeah, regularly I do tabletop exercises with companies, and that becomes a big part of it. I encourage biannual, twice a year tabletop exercises, although it's really hard, I know, for a lot of people to get everybody together to do that. But a big part of that is test IT assumptions, which includes your backup. Run a real world test of your backup, run a real world test of what your EDR can do, etc. They've got to have that as part of your tabletop exercise and be able to present those reports while you have everybody gathered in the room, because that makes your leadership aware of what your vulnerabilities are. If you say, hey, we're backing up these things, but we aren't backing up these things, and our tests showed that we need X amount of dollars in order to finish backing that up, your leadership then assumes the risk, not you. So it's not you having the resume triggering event. They've decided, okay, we understand what this is, and it's the extra money. We're not willing to put it out. So we know the risk, but at least now you've presented them with the information that you have available and allowed your leadership to assume the risk, not you.
So me as a layman, as far as that is concerned, there's a couple of things I'm worried about. I would love to hear your opinion on it. Connected devices, smart fridges, medical equipment, I think are going to be prime targets. And hackers might hold then critical systems hostage. I'm thinking everything is internet connected nowadays. So what about pacemakers, insulin pumps? I'm seeing this as the next market for them to attack.
Right now, they're making so much money from just going after Windows PCs that there's not a need to. If we ever get our act together and either move everybody to all Macs or figure out how to destroy Active Directory and send it to a fiery death, because I mean, ultimately, Active Directory is what allows ransomware actors to move the way that they do. We saw this. So in 2019, Canon introduced a smart camera, and somebody figured out how to install ransomware on it. Now, on the one hand, that's interesting. On the other hand, very few people are going to pay to restore photos on their camera. Pacemakers very different, right? Medical devices are very different. Even your smart fridge, I would see that more as a member of a botnet than something that, oh no, I can't tell how much milk I need remotely. You're probably not going to pay a ransom for that. That's just not that important to people. But if you can infect a whole bunch of these, then suddenly you have a very interesting botnet that's very hard to shut down. So I think that there are absolutely ways that these smart devices can be used. Medical devices are what I worry about, because that is
Mm.
something where you can hold somebody ransom or hold a whole hospital ransom. Oh, we can shut off all your pacemakers. We can shut off all your medical devices. That scares the hell out of me. And we don't have enough good regulation on proper security of medical devices at this point.
Well, yeah, it's like supply chain attacks, right? Little SolarWinds where they just inserted some code into it. What do you think is going to be the changes that we need in 2025?
So I think we are right now, we're going to see in the short term, we're going to see more ransomware, and there's going to be this escalation between ransomware and law enforcement. What I keep an eye on is Australia just enacted a law that bans ransom payments across a lot of sectors. The UK is looking at a law that won't ban ransom payments, but requires a ransom license. So, in other words, you get hit with ransomware, you reach out to the government and say, I got hit, I have to pay. The government then has the option to say, hey, here's how we can help you if we can avoid paying. And if you say, no, I still have to pay, then they say, great, let us know who you're paying, let us know how much you're paying, and let us know the wallet you're paying to so we can track it at least. I don't know if that law will pass or not. I don't know enough about UK laws and so on, but I think that's an interesting approach. In general, I do think we're going to have to figure out ways to reduce the payments to ransomware actors. You and I have been doing this for a while. We're not going to get people to improve their security. I'd love it if that was the answer, that everybody's going to step up their security and there won't be any problem. That's just not realistic. So we may have to do something harsh, because banning ransom payments is a really extreme step that's going to hurt a lot of companies, especially if it's a blanket ban. But we may need to do something like that to protect people from themselves. And it's got to be international, because, like in the US, if you look at North Carolina and Florida, they've banned ransom payments for public entities. So public entities aren't allowed to pay ransom. Hasn't slowed down attacks on public entities in North Carolina and Florida, because the ransomware actors don't know enough about jurisdiction. They're going to hit whatever is open there.
Yeah.
But if they know that no US and UK or Australia target or French target is allowed to pay a ransom, then maybe they rethink their strategy. And the more that we can implement those and enforce them, which is, of course, the hard part, because companies will find a way to pay. Like, oh, well, we can't pay from the US, but we have an office in the Seychelles and they don't have a law, so we'll pay out of that office. But if we can make it so that ransomware is less profitable, and if we have to do that with harsh laws, that may be the best solution. I would love to talk about anything other than ransomware, but since it's not going away, that's all I get to talk about.
So short of drone strikes, it's exactly like you said. We need to make it really almost impossible for bad actors to get the money. Because, well, cryptocurrency is just going to help them even more, that they can get their payments. So that's not a problem, like you said. We're at that point where, well, don't pay or make it impossible for the bad actors to get paid, and enable the companies just simply to spring back from whatever happened, even if they have to start over from 24 hours ago when the last backup happened. It's definitely a way forward.
Yeah. You can't just have the stick, right? There has to be these incentives. Like, okay, don't pay, and we're going to send in,
Yeah.
resources. We're going to send in an incident response team, and we're going to help you do that. And I know a lot of people were like, I don't want my tax dollars helping a company that wasn't paid. But by spending a little bit of money on incident response, the government is hopefully preventing future ransomware attacks. And that makes things better for everybody. Again, not an ideal solution. People should take responsibility for their security, especially large companies. But I would much rather see that than see the money go to a ransomware dude that's just going to buy, another Lamborghini.
Couldn't agree more with you. Yes, let's let trickle down ransomware
Right,
attack.
right.
I got to tell you, I enjoyed this conversation. This was a lot of fun. Before we close, is there anything that you want to plug? Any movies we're going to see you in? Books, blog posts, anything interesting?
So obviously my day job is ransomware researcher, but I also make comic books. So you can see behind me, I have three of my comic books over there, but I made a comic book based on an old radio serial called Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar, where he was a freelance insurance investigator, and
Mhm.
we turned him into a freelance cyber insurance investigator. So he travels around the world stopping ransomware attacks. And unlike me, because our lawyers won't let me, he gets to punch the ransomware dudes. So there's a little bit of wish fulfillment in there. So if you check out yours truly, Johnny Dollar Ransomware, you can order my comics. And it's been, I mean, I've been reading comics my whole life. And so it's been like a lifelong dream to have my own comic book company, which is pretty amazing.
Wow, this is number one on my to-do list right after we sign off here. I'm definitely going to get that. That is amazing. Yeah, I'm definitely want to see this. This is exactly what we all need to get through 2025. We need a comic book that centers on IT. This is going to be fun. Well, thank you very much for joining me, and everybody else who listened to us. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you soon.